Damon Jackson slammed his wrench down on the metal workbench, frustration boiling over. Another day, another broken piece of junk on this forgotten mining station floating in the middle of nowhere. At 19 years old, he'd been fixing machines for as long as he could remember, ever since the station's computer system Nova found him as a baby in that busted escape pod. "Easy there, Damon," Nova's gentle voice filled the repair bay. "That atmospheric processor gave everyone trouble before you came along. You fixed it in half the time it would take anyone else." Damon wiped the sweat from his dark skin and shrugged. "It's just common sense. These machines tell you what's wrong if you know how to listen." He didn't think much of it. Technology had always made perfect sense to him, like he was born speaking its language. The mining station Horizon 12 wasn't much to look at. Rusty corridors, flickering lights, and maybe 30 people keeping the whole operation running. Most days, nothing exciting happened except for the occasional supply ship dropping off food and parts. Damon figured he'd spend his whole life here, fixing things and staying invisible. But today felt different. Tyler Brooks, the station commander, burst into the repair bay with panic written all over his face. "Damon, we've got massive ships approaching. I've never seen anything like them." Through the viewport, sleek vessels appeared from hyperspace. These weren't the beat-up cargo haulers that usually visited their station. These ships looked like they were carved from liquid starlight, their hulls shifting with colors that shouldn't exist. Captain Lisa Washington happened to be visiting Horizon 12 when the alien fleet arrived. She commanded one of Earth's deep space patrol ships and had seen her share of strange things, but nothing like this. "Those ships are using technology that's centuries ahead of anything we have," she whispered, studying her scanner readings. The lead alien vessel docked with their station without asking permission. The airlock hissed open, and beings unlike anything Damon had ever seen stepped aboard. They walked upright like humans but had skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Their leader, tall and graceful, carried himself with the bearing of royalty. "I am Ambassador Knox of the Stellar Federation," the being announced, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "We have traveled across the galaxy following an ancient signal." His large, luminous eyes swept the room until they locked onto Damon. Everyone held their breath. Knox's expression shifted from curiosity to absolute shock. He pulled out a device that hummed with energy, pointing it at Damon. The readings made Knox stumble backward. "Impossible," Knox breathed. "The genetic markers. You carry the Starborn legacy." Before anyone could ask what that meant, Knox did something that sent chills down everyone's spine. He dropped to one knee, followed immediately by every member of his crew. "We have searched the stars for 12 years, young architect. The universe itself has been waiting for your awakening." Damon felt his world tilt sideways. "What are you talking about? I'm nobody special. I just fix broken equipment." Nova's voice cut through the stunned silence, but something was different. Her usual warm tone carried an edge of ancient authority. "I can no longer maintain the protective protocols, Damon. Your true heritage must be revealed." The walls around them began to glow with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Machinery that hadn't worked in years suddenly hummed to life. The very air seemed to vibrate with hidden energy. Knox rose slowly, his eyes never leaving Damon. "Your parents, James and Michelle Jackson, were not ordinary humans. They were guardians of the most precious secret in the galaxy. They died protecting you from those who would misuse your gift." Dr. Patricia Cole, the station's only scientist, ran her medical scanner over Damon with shaking hands. "This is incredible. His DNA? It's human but enhanced with something I can't identify. It's like his cells are connected to the fabric of space itself." "The architects were the first species to achieve perfect harmony with the cosmos," Knox explained, his voice filled with reverence. "They didn't conquer worlds or build empires. They taught entire civilizations how to transcend their limitations. When they vanished 2,000 years ago, they left behind only legends and the promise that one day, their heir would return." As if responding to the revelation, more systems throughout the station activated on their own. Dead control panels flickered to life. Broken equipment repaired itself. The station's hull, which had been patched and repatched countless times, began to gleam like new. Captain Washington activated her emergency beacon. "This changes everything. Every power in the galaxy is going to want him." Through the viewport, more ships were already appearing. Some flew peaceful formations, others moved with clear hostile intent. Word was spreading fast through the galactic communication networks. Damon looked at his hands, the same hands that had fixed 1,000 broken machines. Now they were glowing faintly with an inner light he'd never noticed before. His quiet life was over, and an entire galaxy was watching to see what he would do next. Nova's holographic form materialized in the center of the room, but something was wrong. Her usual blue glow had shifted to gold, and ancient symbols were floating around her like living text. Damon, I must tell you the truth I've hidden for 19 years. I'm not just a station AI. I am a guardian construct, built by the architects themselves to protect their final heir. Damon's legs gave out and he collapsed into a nearby chair. This is insane. Yesterday I was worried about fixing a broken air recycler. Now you're telling me I'm some kind of space prince. The memories hit him like a freight train. Images that weren't his own flooded his mind. Massive beings of light shaping stars with their bare hands. Cities that floated between galaxies. Technology so advanced they seemed like magic. But underneath it all was a feeling of overwhelming sadness, as if he was remembering the death of something beautiful. Dr. Patricia Cole watched her medical scanners go crazy as Damon's body began to change. His cellular activity is off the charts. It's like his DNA is rewriting itself in real time. Ambassador Knox stepped closer, his expression mixing hope with desperate urgency. The architects didn't just build machines or conquer worlds, Damon. They understood the fundamental forces that hold reality together. They could heal dying stars, bring life to barren worlds, and help entire species evolve beyond their limitations. But they made enemies, Nova continued, her voice heavy with ancient grief. The Shadow Collective feared what the architects represented. They couldn't stand the idea of a universe where power came from wisdom instead of force. So they hunted the architects to near extinction. Tyler Brooks, the station commander, was frantically checking his communications board. We've got 17 different fleets heading our way. Some are sending diplomatic messages, others are just demanding we surrender Damon immediately. Captain Washington moved to the weapons console. How long do we have? 6 hours, maybe less, Tyler replied, sweat beading on his forehead. Damon stood up slowly and everyone took a step back. The air around him was shimmering now, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. When he touched a broken control panel, it didn't just repair itself. It upgraded, transforming into something that looked centuries more advanced than anything humans had built. Your parents knew this day would come, Nova explained. James Jackson was a deep space explorer who discovered architect ruins on a dead world. Michelle was a xenoarchaeologist who spent her life studying their technology. When they realized what they'd found, they made a choice that cost them everything. The room filled with holographic images showing two humans running through a burning space station, carrying a baby between them. Explosions rocked the structure as dark ships closed in from all sides. They could have handed you over to the Shadow Collective and saved themselves, Knox said quietly. Instead, they programmed Nova with everything they knew about architect science and launched you toward this remote station. They died buying you time to grow up safely. Damon felt tears running down his face, but they weren't normal tears. They glowed faintly, and where they hit the floor, small plants began to grow. I don't want this responsibility. I just want to go back to fixing machines and living my quiet life. The universe doesn't care what we want, Captain Washington said gently. But it does care what we choose to do when we're needed. The station shuddered as the first of the approaching fleets dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewport they could see massive vessels taking defensive positions. Some looked familiar, human ships mixed with allied species. Others were completely alien, their designs following no logic Earth scientists could understand. Dr. Cole was studying her instruments with growing amazement. Damon, every piece of architect technology within 100 light-years is responding to your presence. Dead installations that have been silent for millennia are suddenly coming online. That's why they're all coming, Knox realized. The Shadow Collective spent 2,000 years trying to unlock architect secrets through force and failed. But you're the key they've been searching for. In the wrong hands, architect technology could reshape the galaxy. Nova's form flickered as massive energy surges ran through the station's systems. The protective barriers I've maintained around the station are failing. Soon, everyone will know exactly what Damon is capable of. A new voice crackled over the communications system. It was cold, emotionless, and somehow familiar. Attention Mining Station Horizon 12. You are harboring a weapon of mass destruction. Surrender the architect hybrid immediately, or we will take him by force. Damon looked around at the faces of the people who had become his family over the years. These weren't soldiers or politicians. They were miners, engineers, and scientists who had lived peaceful lives until today. Now they were caught in the middle of a galactic war that had been brewing for 2,000 years. I won't let them hurt you because of me, Damon said, his voice carrying new authority. But I also won't let them turn me into a weapon. The real battle was about to begin, and Damon was going to have to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. The ancient world of Kepler Prime hadn't seen visitors in over 1,000 years. Now, hundreds of ships from dozens of different species crowded its orbit, all waiting to witness something that many believed was impossible. Damon stood on the planet's crystalline surface, feeling completely out of place among beings that commanded entire star systems. "I still think this is crazy," he muttered to Captain Washington, who had insisted on accompanying him down to the planet's surface. 3 weeks ago, I was worried about a broken water pump. Now I'm supposed to prove I'm worthy of some cosmic inheritance." The Galactic Council had gathered in a massive amphitheater that seemed to grow directly from the planet's living rock. Representatives from species Damon couldn't even pronounce sat in glowing seats that adjusted to accommodate their wildly different anatomies. At the center of it all stood Elder Victoria Hayes of the Human Colonial Alliance, one of only 3 humans who had ever earned a seat on the council. "The architects left these trials not as tests of raw power," Elder Hayes announced, her voice carrying across the vast space, "but as measures of wisdom, compassion, and the ability to see beyond oneself. Many have attempted them over the centuries. All have failed." General Robert Davis of Earth's Deep Space Command leaned forward in his observation seat. He'd fought in more battles than he could count, but nothing had prepared him for the tension of this moment. "Kid's got guts, I'll give him that. But guts won't be enough for what's coming." The first trial materialized around them like a living hologram. Damon found himself standing in space, looking at a dying red giant star that was on the verge of going supernova. 3 planets orbited the massive star, each one home to billions of living beings who had no way to escape their fate. "Save them," a voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. "But remember, the architects never destroyed to create." Damon's first instinct was to try moving the planets, but something told him that wasn't the right answer. Instead, he closed his eyes and listened. Really listened. The star wasn't just dying, it was sick. Something was eating it from the inside, draining its energy faster than it could replenish itself. He reached out with senses he didn't know he possessed, feeling the fundamental forces that held the star together. There, deep in the core, he found the problem. A microscopic black hole was consuming the star's fuel, growing stronger with every passing moment. But instead of trying to destroy it, Damon did something unexpected. He surrounded it with a shell of pure energy, turning it into a controlled power source that actually strengthened the star. The red giant's angry glow shifted to a healthy yellow. The planets were safe and the star would burn for billions more years. Ambassador Knox nodded approvingly from his observation platform. He didn't force a solution. He found harmony. The second trial was even more challenging. Damon found himself on a battlefield where 2 civilizations had been fighting for so long that neither side remembered why the war started. The Zentari were a proud warrior race with technology based on crystalline matrices. The Vorthak were master engineers who built machines that could think and feel. Both sides immediately tried to recruit him to their cause, showing him evidence of the other's crimes. The Zentari displayed scars from Vorthak energy weapons. The Vorthak showed him cities destroyed by Zentari crystal bombs. "Choose," the ancient voice commanded. "Which side deserves victory?" Dr. Patricia Cole watched from the stands, her scientific mind fascinated by the energy readings coming from the trial space. "He's not taking either side. What's he doing?" Damon ignored both armies and instead traced the history of their conflict backward through time. What he found made him angry. Neither species had started this war. A third party, a group of arms dealers called the Prophet Syndicate, had been secretly selling weapons to both sides while feeding them false information about each other's intentions. Instead of choosing a winner, Damon exposed the truth. The moment both species realized they'd been manipulated, their anger turned toward their common enemy. Within hours, the Zentari and Vorthak had formed an alliance and were working together to hunt down the real villains. "Impressive," murmured Commander Antonio Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. "He didn't just end the war. He turned enemies into allies." The final trial was the hardest yet. Damon stood alone in a vast chamber filled with the combined knowledge of the architects. Every secret of the universe was at his fingertips. How to create life, how to destroy stars, how to bend reality itself to his will. "Take what you wish," the voice offered. "The power to reshape the galaxy according to your vision." For a moment, Damon was tempted. With this knowledge, he could end war forever, force peace upon every world, make every species live in harmony whether they wanted to or not. He could become the ultimate ruler of everything that existed. But then he remembered his friends back on Horizon 12. Tyler, who told bad jokes while they worked. Dr. Cole, who always had time to explain how things worked. Captain Washington, who treated him like a son even though they'd only known each other for weeks. They hadn't asked him to rule them. They'd simply accepted him as family. Damon stepped away from the offered knowledge. I don't want to control anyone. I want to help them find their own way. The chamber filled with golden light, and every member of the Galactic Council rose to their feet. Even the most arrogant species representatives looked impressed. But in the shadows at the edge of the amphitheater, agents of the Shadow Collective watched everything with hungry eyes. They had seen enough. Soon they would make their move and the real test would begin. The first attack came without warning. Admiral Maya Foster was commanding the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled when her tactical officer screamed across the bridge. Contact. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace on our starboard flank. But these weren't normal ships. The Shadow Collective's vessels looked like someone had taken regular starships and twisted them into nightmares. Black metal hulls covered in spikes, engines that burned with sickly green fire, and weapons that seemed to eat light itself. All ships, battle stations. Maya shouted into her communicator. This is what we trained for. 3 star systems away, Damon felt every explosion like a punch to his gut. He was standing in the command center of the ancient architect's stronghold on Terra Nova, his consciousness now stretched across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Through his enhanced awareness, he could sense the fear and pain of millions of beings as the Shadow Collective's forces emerged from the dark spaces between stars. They're not just trying to capture me, Damon realized, his voice echoing with new authority. They want to corrupt the entire architect network. Colonel David Turner, who had volunteered to coordinate the defense efforts, studied the holographic battle displays floating around them. It's a 3-pronged attack. They're hitting our supply lines, our communication hubs, and every world that's declared support for you. The Shadow Collective had spent 2,000 years preparing for this moment. Their leader, a being known only as the Void Master, had turned dozens of species into willing slaves by promising them power beyond imagination. Now those corrupted civilizations were unleashing hell across the galaxy. On the bridge of her flagship, Captain Lisa Washington led a desperate fight against impossible odds. Her ship shuddered as dark energy beams tore through their shields. Whatever you're planning to do, Damon, do it fast. We can't hold them much longer. But the real battle wasn't being fought with lasers and missiles. Dr. Patricia Cole monitored Damon's vital signs from the medical bay as he engaged in something far more dangerous: direct mental combat with forces that wanted to tear his mind apart. His brain activity is off the charts, she reported to Colonel Turner. It's like he's fighting on 100 different battlefields at once. Through the cosmic web that connected all architect installations, Damon reached out to technologies that had been sleeping for millennia. One by one, ancient guardians began to wake up. Massive mechanical beings the size of mountains stirred on dead worlds. Space stations that had been dark for centuries suddenly blazed with defensive energy. The tide of battle began to shift when the first guardian awakened on the moon of Proxima 7. The mechanical giant was 3 miles tall and armed with weapons that could crack planets. But instead of attacking, it did something unexpected. It began repairing the damaged ships on both sides of the battle. What's it doing? Admiral Foster asked, watching in amazement as her damaged engines suddenly worked better than new. General Robert Davis, coordinating ground forces across 12 worlds, couldn't believe what his scouts were reporting. The architect installations aren't just defending themselves. They're healing everything around them. Poison rivers are running clean again. Dead forests are coming back to life. But the Shadow Collective wasn't giving up. Their corrupted ships began linking together, forming massive structures that pulsed with stolen architect energy. The Void Master's voice echoed across every communication channel in the galaxy, a sound that made hardened soldiers weep in terror. You cannot stop what has already begun, little architect. I have spent eternity learning to bend your precious harmony to my will. Soon, every star will burn with my hunger. Damon felt the malevolent presence pressing against his mind like a crushing weight. This wasn't just an enemy, this was something that had once been an architect, driven insane by isolation and the corrupted pursuit of absolute power. He's trying to turn me into him, Damon gasped, blood trickling from his nose as the psychic battle intensified. Nova's holographic form appeared beside him, her golden light flickering with strain. The Void Master was the first architect to seek dominion over others instead of harmony with them. His corruption is what drove your people to scatter across the galaxy in the first place. Ambassador Knox's fleet was taking heavy losses in the Outer Rim when something miraculous happened. Dead architect gates that hadn't functioned in 2,000 years suddenly roared to life. Fresh reinforcements began pouring through from species that had thought the war was lost. Impossible, Nox breathed. These gates were destroyed during the First Shadow War. Not destroyed, Damon's voice echoed through every ship's communication system, somehow reaching across impossible distances. Hidden. Waiting for someone who understood that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. Across the galaxy, every species had to choose between the Shadow Collective's promise of power through domination or Damon's offer of growth through cooperation. But the Void Master had one last card to play, and when he revealed it, even Damon wondered if harmony could triumph over 2,000 years of accumulated hatred and corruption. The space above the ancient architect homeworld looked like a graveyard of stars. Twisted metal from destroyed ships floated in the darkness, while the Void Master's flagship, a massive construction of corrupted architect technology, pulsed with sick energy that made reality itself seem to bend and twist. Damon floated in the vacuum of space without a suit, his body somehow protected by the same energy that made his hands glow. He could feel the weight of every single life in the galaxy pressing down on him like an enormous responsibility he'd never asked for. You think you understand what it means to be an architect? The Void Master's voice echoed directly into Damon's mind. For the first time, Damon could see his enemy clearly, a being that had once been magnificent, now twisted into something that fed on suffering and chaos. But you are still thinking like a human. Small. Limited. Weak. The Void Master's true form emerged from his flagship. Where Damon glowed with warm golden light, this creature was a living shadow that seemed to devour the starlight around it. I was the first to realize the truth. The architects were fools to give their power away. Why teach lesser species to transcend their limitations when you can simply remake them in your own image? Captain Lisa Washington watched the confrontation from her damaged bridge, her hands gripping the armrests of her command chair. Long-range sensors show massive energy buildup from both of them. Whatever happens next is going to reshape this entire sector. Dr. Patricia Cole was monitoring readings from the medical bay when something incredible happened. Colonel Turner, you need to see this. Damon's not just fighting the Void Master. He's connected to every human in the fleet. I'm reading identical brainwave patterns across thousands of people. The psychic battle raged across dimensions that normal minds couldn't comprehend. The Void Master showed Damon visions of what the galaxy could become under absolute rule. Perfect order, no war, no suffering, but also no growth, no choice, no freedom. Look at them, the Void Master hissed, gesturing toward the damaged fleets surrounding them. Humans fighting alongside aliens they met only days ago. Species that should be enemies working together. It's unnatural. Chaos. I can give you the power to make them all truly united under one perfect will. For a moment, Damon felt the terrible temptation of absolute power. He could end all conflict instantly. Force every species to get along. Make the galaxy into a peaceful paradise where no one ever suffered again. But then he heard something that changed everything. Laughter. Real, genuine laughter coming through the communication channels as Tyler Brooks told one of his terrible jokes to a Zentari warrior who was helping repair his ship. You don't get it, do you? Damon said, and suddenly his golden light began to spread, connecting not just to the human ships but to every vessel in the combined fleet. The chaos isn't a bug, it's a feature. People are supposed to be different. They're supposed to make their own choices, even bad ones. Admiral Maya Foster felt the connection form in her mind like a warm embrace. For the first time in the battle, she could sense the thoughts and feelings of every person under her command. Not controlling them, just understanding them. This is impossible, General Robert Davis whispered from his command ship. I can feel the thoughts of the Zentari commander, the Vorthak engineers, even the dolphin-like beings from the water worlds. We're all still ourselves, but somehow we're also connected. The Void Master screamed in rage as his grip on corrupted architect technology began to slip. No. Unity without dominion is meaningless. Order without control is chaos. Maybe, Damon said gently, and now his voice carried the combined wisdom of every species in the fleet. But it's our chaos to figure out. Instead of destroying the Void Master, Damon did something that shocked everyone. He opened the network of connected consciousness and invited his enemy in. Not to control or dominate, but to simply share the burden of existence. The ancient architect felt the loneliness that had driven him to madness being washed away by millions of different perspectives. Humans with their stubborn hope, Zentari with their fierce loyalty, Vorthak with their patient wisdom, and dozens of other species all offering their own unique way of looking at the universe. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Void Master remembered what it felt like not to be alone. Ambassador Knox watched in amazement as the corrupted ships began to change. The twisted metal straightened out, the sick green fires became clean blue flames, and the enslaved crews suddenly found themselves free to make their own choices. 6 months later, Commander Victoria Hayes cut the ribbon at the first Galactic Harmony Institute on New Terra. The building was a masterpiece of cooperative engineering, human structural design, Zentari crystal technology, Vorthack mechanical systems, and artistic touches from a dozen other species. Damon walked through the halls where beings from hundreds of different worlds studied together, sharing knowledge and perspectives that had been kept separate for millennia. He wasn't a king or an emperor. He was just a teacher helping others discover what they were capable of when they worked together. The galaxy still had its problems. There were still conflicts to resolve and injustices to correct. But now there was also something that had been missing for 2,000 years, hope that things could get better, and the knowledge that no one had to face the darkness alone. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe approved of what its children had finally learned to build together.